Some nights change a person forever, not because something loud happens, but because something inside finally breaks. For Armin, it wasn't the thunderstorm outside or the screaming winds that night. It was the silence in his own heart. He sat alone on the edge of a worn-out wooden dock, watching the water move in waves that mirrored the turmoil in his chest. The world around him was asleep, oblivious to the weight he carried. Friends had come and gone, promises had been made and broken, and yet here he was, standing at the edge of his own doubts. The path he had chosen was lonely, unconventional, and often cruel, but deep inside, he felt a restless whisper urging him forward. From a young age, Armin had known he didn't belong to the crowd. He had been the boy who stayed behind while the others ran in packs, the one who asked questions no one wanted to answer. In school, while others sought validation through conformity, he sought truth, often at the cost of isolation. Every decision he made seemed to widen the gap between him and the rest of the world. Yet, he had a quiet resilience that others mistook for stubbornness. He understood something they didn't. The first steps are always the hardest, especially when no one is walking beside you. Life had tested him in ways that would have broken most people. His first major challenge came when he decided to leave his small hometown to pursue a dream that seemed impossible to everyone around him. People laughed, some even mocked him, telling him that success belonged only to those who followed the beaten path. They warned him that walking alone was dangerous, that failure would be his only companion. But Armin couldn't ignore the fire burning inside his chest, the silent call that demanded he take the road less traveled. With nothing but a small bag, a few dollars, and a heart full of courage, he stepped onto the unknown path, knowing he might stumble, fall, or even fail, but determined to rise every time. The first year was brutal. He faced hunger, rejection, and loneliness in ways he had never imagined. Doors slammed in his face, and opportunities slipped through his fingers like water. There were nights when he curled up under the cold stars, questioning whether it had all been a mistake. Each morning he forced himself to stand, to walk, to move forward while the world around him slept or doubted. Every small step was an act of defiance, a whisper to the universe that he would not be bound by fear. He discovered that courage wasn't loud or heroic. It was quiet, patient, and relentless. It was waking up each day and choosing to keep walking, even when the path seemed impossible. One of the turning points came when Armin met a mentor, an old man who had once walked a path very similar to his own. The old man didn't offer easy solutions or promises of success. Instead, he offered perspective. He said, "The world follows those who dare to walk alone, because they are the ones brave enough to carry vision when no one else believes in it." Those words struck Armin deeply. He realized that the loneliness he had feared was not a punishment but a sign that he was on the right path. It was the courage to face solitude, the ability to keep moving without applause or acknowledgement, that made the difference. Years passed and Armin's persistence began to yield results. Not overnight, not through luck, but through relentless effort and unwavering belief in his vision. He built a small community around his work, not because he sought followers, but because people naturally gravitated toward someone who had the courage to stand alone. Slowly, the caravans began to follow, not because he had sought them, but because they were drawn to the light he carried through his struggles. The boy who once sat alone on a dock, feeling invisible and unheard, had become a beacon for others who had lost their way. Yet, success did not erase the scars of the journey. Every victory carried memories of the nights he cried silently, the moments he felt invisible, and the countless times he doubted himself. He often thought about the people who told him he couldn't, the friends who left, and the family who didn't understand. But instead of resentment, he carried gratitude. Gratitude for the solitude that had strengthened him, for the hardships that had taught him resilience, and for the courage that had kept him moving when everything else seemed lost. The loneliness he once feared had transformed into a companion, a quiet reminder of the strength he had forged in silence. There were moments when the world seemed to conspire against him. Projects failed, partnerships dissolved, and opportunities vanished without warning. But each setback was a lesson in endurance. Armin learned to embrace failure, to see it not as an enemy but as a guide, showing him where he needed to grow. And through it all, he discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward in spite of it. The more he embraced solitude and perseverance, the more others began to notice, quietly following in the footsteps he had carved alone. The true test of his courage came not in moments of triumph, but in moments of personal sacrifice. He watched relationships fade, saw loved ones drift away, and felt the sting of isolation acutely. Yet he never compromised on his values or his vision. He understood that walking alone sometimes meant leaving behind comfort, familiarity, and approval. But he also understood that compromise came at a greater cost: the loss of self, the erosion of dreams, and the quiet death of potential. Every choice to continue alone was a statement of faith, in himself, in his purpose, and in the belief that caravans only follow those who dare to take the first solitary step. One evening, after years of tireless effort, Armin stood at the edge of a conference hall, watching a room full of people who had gathered not because he asked them to, but because they had been drawn by the courage he embodied. The faces were diverse, each with their own struggles, but all carrying a shared admiration for someone who had dared to stand alone. In that moment, he understood the profound truth of his journey. The path of solitude is not a punishment, but a calling. Those who walk alone are not lonely. They are leaders, visionaries, and guides for others who have yet to find their way. As the audience applauded, Armin's mind drifted back to that boy on the dock, to the nights of doubt and fear, to the silent battles fought in the dark. He realized that the journey had never been about recognition or reward. It had been about courage, persistence, and the quiet power of moving forward when the world turned away. Every step, every hardship, every lonely night had been necessary to reach this moment, and he knew, deep in his heart, that the journey was far from over. There would always be more mountains to climb, more doubts to conquer, and more roads to walk alone. But that was the price of true vision, and he would pay it willingly. Before this story ends, I have a small request for you, the viewer. Take a moment to reflect on the message of courage and perseverance in this journey. Share one line in the comments that speaks to what it means to walk your own path, even when it's difficult. Let your words inspire someone else who is standing alone today. In the end, remember this: the world often waits for the crowd, but history is written by those brave enough to take the first solitary step. Those who have the courage to walk alone are not lost. They are the trailblazers, the silent warriors, and the guiding light for those who follow. Stand firm, walk with purpose, and embrace the solitude that comes with true courage. Because one day, when the caravans follow, you will realize that every lonely step you took was never wasted. It was shaping a legacy that will outlast time.